Dmitry Medvedev, all right, he has made a stern warning to the West. And we're going to be talking about Ukraine a lot tomorrow. But Dmitry Medvedev on his Telegram made a stern warning as the deputy chair at the National Security Council there in Russia. And here is what he had to say. I'm just going to pull up the article really quick. RT characterized as apocalyptic warning to the West. He used a Book of Revelation quote to comment on the quote-unquote Kiev security treaty demands, which is in the article. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely heinous. So on Tuesday, Dmitry Medvedev commented on the security guarantees proposal that Kiev made, which was really a prologue to a third world war, he said, calling it a historical appeal to Western countries engaged in a proxy war. He said if the West continues its quote-unquote unrestrained pumping of the Kiev regime with the most dangerous type of weapons, Russia's military campaign will move to the next level, where visible boundaries and potential predictability of actions by the parties of the conflict will be erased, and the conflict will take a life of its own, as wars always do, he argued. And then the Western nations will not be able to sit in their clean homes, laughing at how they carefully weaken Russia by proxy. Everything will be on fire for them. Their people will harvest their grief in full. The land will be on fire and the concrete will melt, Medvedev wrote, before citing a Bible verse in Revelations 9:18. Yet still the narrow-minded politicians and their stupid think tanks thoughtfully twirling a glass of wine in their hands talk about how they can deal with us without entering into a direct war. Dull idiots without classical education, he said. So before I get a comment on that, I just want to tell you what the security treaty was. It was basically the draft said that the U.S. and its allies would guarantee Ukraine's pre-2014 borders with weapons, ammunition, financial assistance, and training, as well as committing to maintain sanctions against Russia for as long as Kiev wants and handing over any confiscated Russian property to Ukraine. So what does that sound like? That sounds like an imperialist project. It sounds like Ukraine is literally calling for an imperialist project. But Medvedev absolutely obliterated the West here. This is just, to me, it's hilarious because he used a Bible verse. I'm going to talk about social conservatism here, but, we could argue that there's a lot of, I don't know about the Bible itself. I'm not a religious partisan, but, with Jesus and the struggle, we could say that there was an anti-oppression, a struggle against power and whatnot there. But let's just talk about how he used this verse to basically say, F around and find out, right? Like, you want to do this, you will be at war with us. And that's just quite obvious, right? When it comes to just the terms of that, basically saying, give us all of the land that we want pre-2014 because we said so. Mainly, give us the Donbass. The West will basically be usurping the Donbass from not Russia, but from the people of the Donbass who want to be independent, from the Donetsk Republic, Lugansk Republic, from the forces in the Donbass who want to be independent, who want sovereignty, because the Ukrainian regime has been conducting an absolute terror and an ethnic cleansing of East Ukraine for more than 8 years now. So that's what's at stake here. And it also means confiscating Russian property and basically using the weapons of war, not just to give to the Ukraine's military, but to use the West as basically an usurper, which you could argue is always the goal here. But Medvedev said, no, you do that, all bets are off. This special military operation will be a war. You will be in a global war, a World War III scenario, and you will not enjoy it. You will burn. I mean, this is the stakes of it, right? Russia's a nuclear power. Russia has a strong military, and it's willing to defend sovereignty, and it's willing to defend the sovereignty of the Donetsk, the Lugansk, and the Donbass region, right? It's going to do that. And so any direct attempts to thwart this effort, to interfere, not just with sanctions, not just with throwing weapons, but with outright force, is going to be met with force. And Russia would have every right to do that. That's international law. If there's going to be a foreign aggressor coming in and trying to usurp land, not just from Russia, but from Ukraine, from eastern Ukraine, that's a war. And all bets are off. So, I mean, to me, this just shows how suicidal all of this is, because the US and the EU, they can't handle what would happen afterward. They can barely handle what's happening now, a proxy war, which they've waged it against a country that is not, one, going to bow down, but is not going to not just bow down, but is not going to produce the same results for them. Russia is not a weak country. It's not a small country. It's not a country that you can just turn into a neo-colony and try to erase any memory of that, try to block it out. No. By waging a proxy war with Russia, you're putting the entire European continent at peril. Its economy is going up in smoke because of it. And the United States' economy arguably has been in smoking for so long now, but also is facing dire consequences and is relying upon turning Europe into a scrap heap to survive a little longer. But remember this, folks. If Europe goes into a recession, the U.S. is going into a recession. That is, I mean, in my opinion, the U.S. is in a recession right now. So is Europe. But whenever it's official or whatever, if Europe, where Europe goes, the U.S. is going to go. Because economic crises are crises of overproduction, underconsumption. We're in the thick of that now. And then you have what investors do under those circumstances is they say, all right, guys, closing shop. We're closing shop. We're getting bailed out. And that's the deal. We're going to get bailed out. We're closing up shop. Your jobs, done. And then we're going to go to the government and get some money. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen here too. Arguably it's happening right now. It is happening right now. So this is a stern warning from Medvedev. It's one that everyone should take seriously. This isn't to breed fear, but it's a serious, serious warning. It's a serious warning. They're not playing. Russia is not playing anymore. Neither Russia and China have the luxury of playing games. They never were. But this isn't some kind of, well, we can just see what's going to happen. We can try diplomacy. No. The United States, its junior imperialist partners, have no interest in it. So this proxy war only has one logical conclusion from the perspective of the imperialists, which is win by proxy war, not going to happen, or win by direct war, not going to happen, but watch the flames erupt, right? That's the trajectory of imperialism right now. Russia is saying, well, they were saying back in April, we're ready for peace. We're ready to end this. We're ready to come to a negotiated settlement. They were saying this back in December before this even started. But it's not being listened to. It's not being heeded. And as Vladimir Putin has made so many statements, even in just the last couple weeks, a month alone, what are you to do? Russia's not going to imperil its economic interests, its geopolitical interests of any kind, military, political, anything, for the sake of the United States and the West. It's not going to do, or Ukraine at this point, Kiev, the Ukrainian government. It's not going to do this. It's not going to do it. This will go on and on and on until this contradiction reaches a resolution, meaning the antagonism, as we say in Marxist terms, develops on one end or the other, right? That's the struggle right now. That's the formulation of the class struggle. You want to apply socialist Marxist concepts to this? Well, you have two sides here struggling for different sets of interests, right? You have Russia trying to preserve sovereignty, trying to gain stability in this region, trying to lead a multipolar world, and defending itself from NATO encroachment and from the suicidal aggression. Then on the other hand, you have the U.S. and the imperialists, the U.S., its allies, fighting for the profits of the military contractors, fighting for hegemony over Europe, fighting for so many of these kinds of interests, right? Fighting for whatever will be best for the financiers, for the military-industrial complex. That's what the U.S. and NATO and the EU are fighting for. And the overall objective of that is weaken Russia, destroy Russia. That's the goal. So that's the contradiction. That's the struggle at play. And of course, with Ukraine Twitter and propaganda and the new Cold War and how this is shaped out, it isn't talked about like that. It's talked about with hyperbole, right? Russia's imperialist. It's an aggressor. The U.S. is democracy. It's fighting for democracy. Ukraine is a democracy. Why wouldn't you want Ukraine to get weapons from NATO? It has to. It's under attack, right? All these oversimplifications, overgeneralizations, without any attention to that class struggle. So again, that's the kind of like how we need to, if we're thinking about this again from the theme of Marxism, we need to apply these concepts to the actual existing class struggle before us on the global stage. And that's where it's at right now. And it's at a very acute point where someone like Dmitry Medvedev is willing to make these comments quite confidently and say, this is how it's going to go.